Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. We will be getting started here in about a minute or so, minute and a half. But thank you so much for joining. While we wait, why don't you write in the chat where you're joining from? And then I always have a little icebreaker question. So my icebreaker question for today is, what is your favorite movie? So feel free to answer one or both. Totally cool. Totally cool with me. So. Looks like we have someone joining from Egypt and Berkeley as well. And their favorite movie is The Big Blue. Never heard of that. So, but yeah, Chattanooga, Tennessee, Michigan, New York, Birmingham, Alabama. So got a good group here. If you're just joining, hello and welcome. We're getting started about 30 seconds or so, I would say. While we wait as well, I'm going to open up a poll. Feel free to take that as I go and do my housekeeping spiel as we're waiting as well. But we will go ahead and get started here and probably now, I think. All right, go ahead and get started. Hello and welcome to today's webinar, The Future of Marketing Education, Why Your Students Need Marketing Operations Skills, sponsored by Stukent. My name is Rebecca Ackerman, and I'm part of the production team here at the American Marketing Association. Before we start, I wanted to point out a few things. There is a Q&A box you can put questions into for the Q&A. It'll be open throughout the entire webinar, so as you think of them, please drop them in there. You don't have to wait until the end. You can also participate and network in the chat as well. And then finally, as I mentioned, there is that poll, and I will go ahead and I'll share the results out as once I'm done doing this. But this session will be recorded and available for on-demand viewing right here on this platform. You'll be receiving an email within 24 hours with the link to access this content on demand. Also, a little tip. If you leave this page open and you hit refresh in about 2 hours, the recording will populate right there. So that's just another tip as well. I'm very excited to introduce you to today's speakers, Jeff Larson, Professor of Marketing at Brigham Young University, Marriott School of Business, and Andrew Dimmick, Marketing Operations Manager at ObservePoint and a Marketing Operations course consultant and instructor. So welcome to the two of you. But before we get started, I want to go over those poll results really fast. So the poll was, do you have a dedicated marketing ops or marketing automation course at your school? It looks like the overwhelming response is no, with 83% of the votes, and 17% say yes. So wanted to give those, and I'll pass it over to you now.
All right, thanks, Rebecca. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. I guess I'm not surprised that most schools are not teaching that. I'm actually kind of surprised by the 17% numbers, higher than I probably would have anticipated. So I'm excited to hear from those of you who do have this dedicated marketing operations course. I'd love to hear your experience and how it compares to ours. So before we get started, I want to start with a quick story. Back in 2008, in January, I was meeting with my department chair, who prompted me to think about a new course I needed to teach. I was teaching marketing research and I needed to pick up another course, and I chose digital marketing, although it was 2008, so I called it, I think, internet marketing at the time. And the reason I wanted to teach that was I thought it was a new upcoming burgeoning area of marketing that our students should know, but my only qualification for teaching the course was that I was the youngest in the department. And so I had a year to prepare the course, which naturally meant 10 months later, I started thinking about the course in earnest and quickly realized I didn't have the skills or knowledge to teach a whole course on it. And one of the senior faculty suggested that I bring in an adjunct professor, somebody who worked in digital marketing, to help me design the course. And that's what I did. And for several years afterwards, each of us taught a section of the course. And that's how I went about gaining expertise in digital marketing. So there's three reasons I teach that. I tell that story. Number one is it parallels my experience with this marketing operations course pretty well. Number two, it gives you a sense of my teaching philosophy. Even though I'm a career academic, my teaching philosophy is very centered on the actual practitioner skills that the students need. And the third reason is it gives a chance to give you a little bit of an introduction of Stukent. So Stukent is a courseware provider. They provide digital textbooks as well as simulations for business courses. And it was in 2014 that Stukent approached me about writing their first textbook in digital marketing, which I did in conjunction with the founder of Stukent, who was a practitioner in marketing. And so the courseware, the digital marketing text that we wrote, was very practitioner focused, kind of like this course. It also gives you a sense of kind of the practitioner focus of the courseware that Stukent provides. So The agenda for today is we're going to talk about marketing operations in this marketing operations course that Andrew and I taught this past winter at BYU. We're going to talk about what is marketing operations, make sure we're all on the same page, talk about the reasoning why I wanted to teach this course. And then I'm going to turn the time over to Andrew to talk about the specifics of the content that we taught our students, how we structured the course, some lessons learned, some things we're going to do differently when we teach this again this coming winter. So without further ado, what is marketing operations? So here we have a very typical business-to-business marketing funnel, right? You're going to sign your customers up for some contract, but then of course you're going to live or die by that retention and by that repeat revenue you're going to get from those customers. So that's how it differs from the traditional maybe AIDA model that the funnel that we often look at, but this is a very typical B2B funnel. I'm going to add a little more detail to that. So if we have sort of our marketing activities broken down a little bit more into this B2B sales cycle, we might do a variety of marketing activities, advertising online, as well as some events, with the goal of generating a lead, which typically takes the form of an email collected, and that email indicating, I want to learn more, I'm a potential customer. And for a variety of reasons, your company might not send a salesperson or assign a salesperson to every lead that comes in. The primary reason being simple cost, right? Every fly-by-night lead, if you assign a salesperson to that lead, your salesperson time is extremely valuable, and you're going to not only waste your salespeople's time, but you're probably going to generate a pretty low morale if salespeople are chasing a bunch of fly-by-night leads that don't lead anywhere. So instead, a lot of those leads are going to go to a lead nurture pool where they're going to receive some marketing emails to accelerate the sales process, but also a secondary reason is so you can find out who's truly a serious lead here, right? So those who continue to open up those emails and investigate further and click on some of those links, eventually, some of those leads are going to become marketing qualified leads. And that is marketing in conjunction with sales has determined some metrics that they're going to agree upon as being good indications of a contact who is worth pursuing with a salesperson's time. They're going to pass that marketing qualified lead over to the sales team, who the sales team will reach out and qualify some of those as sales qualified leads. These are people who have responded, who actually have decision-making authority in their company to pursue a potential contract. And then through the demo, but more steps than what I've shown here, but eventually there's going to be a demo call and several steps, and eventually they'll sign a contract. And then, of course, there's going to be a lot of marketing effort towards retention and customer success on there. So there we have, a more fleshed out B2B sales process. Well, involved in that whole process, we have a variety of marketing technologies that are usually termed the marketing tech stack. And so the marketing operations course is that we taught was focused on this whole process, specifically as managed by these technologies, right? So we have our marketing automation platform. We have the email marketing platform that we might send out those email nurture campaigns through. We'll be doing some data enrichment, getting those email addresses, finding out what company they work for, their position in that company. We might have a CRM system like Salesforce, managing that after that handoff to sales. But we have a variety of other sales enablement, analytics throughout the process. So all of those technologies are going to be working together to enable that sales process. So when we talk about marketing operations, we're talking about that entire B2B process with a little bit more focus on the marketing automation platform in the early stages up through the handoff to sales. Okay, so that's what we're talking about with marketing operations. So motivation. So why did I want to teach this course? So I have a variety of experiences that led me to say I really want this course to be taught to our students. So as I mentioned, I started teaching digital marketing back in 2009 and taught that for a variety of years. By default, the digital marketing lessons I teach tend to be B2C focused, e-commerce focused, with all of the digital marketing tactics associated with that. I do try to bring in some B2B tactics, and as a result of trying to keep up to date with digital marketing practice, I came across a lot of the sophisticated digital marketing practice that was happening around B2B. And so became very enthused about that. And then cementing that in, my enthusiasm, I had a variety of former students, and invariably some of my top students and my most enjoyable students were now working in marketing operations. Coincidentally, I was the advisor for our marketing association, and three past marketing association presidents were all working in marketing operations. And so I would ask them about their experience and how they got into marketing operations. And invariably they told me either I fell into it, or I, picked up some skills, which led me to pick up some additional skills. And then here I found myself in marketing operations at the center of my organization's marketing efforts. And so my desire was to allow my students to not just fall into marketing operations through some idiosyncratic kind of event, but to strategically target those jobs and to gain the skills so they could go after those jobs. Another reason was I wanted my students to be able to get their first job out of undergrad to be a salary that commanded 10 to 20K more than the typical, say, digital marketing job at an agency. Even though those jobs are great and they have great growth, we often publish our statistics in terms of starting salaries, and our salaries in marketing are lower than other fields. Part of that is the marketplace, but part of that is the kind of jobs our students are getting, and I wanted to give them the opportunity to go after some of those higher jobs right off the bat. And then more selfish reason, that last one, academic rigor. What do I mean by that? I'm an academic, I do research, right? And there's been a very little research in the area of marketing operations. So I wanted to learn more about the area and start teaching in the area, so I knew, hey, is there some opportunity for research in this area? And if you know anything about academic research, it's pretty slow going. So the jury is still out on whether this will actually lead to any kind of research productivity. But those were sort of my motivations for wanting to have this course be taught at BYU. And so I signed up to teach this class, and my experience was pretty similar to digital marketing. A few months out, recognizing I was gathering information from lots of former students who worked in the area about what I should teach. And then it came down to it. It was very clear that teaching this course with no help would entail lots of late nights prepping and some additional stress. And so I was lucky enough that I was able to find that Andrew Dimmick had another former student had moved back into the area, and he was able to teach the class with me. So I'm going to turn the time over to him to talk about the content that we planned, but mostly he planned for this course.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeff. Really appreciate that introduction. And what I want to do before I start getting into the content is talk a little bit about my journey, because like Jeff said, I was one of those people who fell into marketing operations. I went through BYU's undergraduate marketing courses, all incredible courses, learned wonderful information, very much like I would say, like we saw from that poll, 83% don't teach a marketing operations course. A lot of instruction is focused on B2C, e-commerce, and how do we sell CPG products. And that was where I thought my career was going to go. And there were some twists and turns and how that ended up. And my first job right out of college was as a marketing analyst, where I was just looking at reports, providing insights, and presenting that to executives in the company. And what I eventually got to was there was a need for somebody to begin managing the HubSpot marketing automation platform. I'd never touched it, and I had no idea what it was. And so I just kind of fell into owning this system, making sure all of our emails were sent out on time, all the data management processes that have to exist in order for marketing to run well. And I had to learn as I went. There were a lot of things that I did not know, that I was not trained for in school, that I had to learn as I went. And most people that I talk to, most of my colleagues, most of the people in my network, that has been a shared experience where we just find ourselves in this role, whether by accident, whether by turnover or whatever, and then it becomes something that we enjoy significantly. It is a part of my life. It is a wonderful discipline. It is a great place to be for students who want to find that blend of creativity and analytics, people who maybe don't find themselves exclusively as a left brain or a right brain, a really nice blend of that. And we'll talk about why. So let's dive into this meat of the course. Like, what do we actually teach our students? So the first element of this, and Jeff, you want to go to the next slide for me? Looks like maybe Jeff has paused. The first component of this course was, how do we give our students the knowledge they need to be successful in an entry-level marketing operations course, marketing automation job from day one. Like, that was the focus, was how do we make sure that they can walk into this job and know exactly what to do from the moment that they start. And where that becomes challenging is, as we saw, is that marketing operations is a very, very broad discipline. There is a lot that goes into this, even though it's a relatively newer field within marketing. It's pretty broad. And so within marketing ops, think of this discipline as having four main pillars. And these pillars of marketing operations, these are what marketing operations does to support the overall marketing function. And the four pillars are: first, we have technology and data management. So think of this as your platform operations. Jeff showed that overall B2B marketing funnel. There are a lot of different technologies that are involved in those processes. So managing a tech stack, setting up the integrations between one platform to another. Then there's the data management side. How do you actually keep all of those different databases clean? That is really, really important, because if your data is bad, then your marketing will also be bad. You can't make good marketing decisions with poor data. So then we have the second pillar of marketing operations, which we would call campaign enablement and project management. How do you actually plan, run, and manage a marketing campaign effectively? That is a big part of marketing operations. And the third pillar of marketing operations is we think about analytics and intelligence. So reporting, attribution, how do you display that information in a way that can lead to action? And then the fourth pillar of marketing operations is about marketing strategy. Think of this as, and this is a newer element of marketing operations, where more people in marketing ops are becoming what you could consider the chief of staff to the head of marketing, working with them to set marketing targets, working with them to manage the budget of the marketing organization. And the way that I think about it, and the way that I tell people that either students or people that come to me for advice on my career, is the most important thing that a marketing operations professional can do is to become the person in the marketing organization who knows better than anyone else what is working and what is not. If you can't say, these are the marketing actions that are working, and these are the ones that we should stop doing right now, then that is an area of opportunity for the marketing operations person to fill, and we should be doing that. So with that, right, we could spend an entire webinar on one of those pillars of marketing operations. And so with that, we then said, okay, how do we teach enough of this very broad discipline in a way that, again, the goal being be job ready on day one? So what you're seeing on your screen right now are the 4 units of the course that we taught. And the first unit was, as you're seeing, was foundational principles, right? There's a lot of foundational knowledge that students need to have in order to be successful in a B2B, business to business focused marketing operations role. Things like, how do you identify a product-led growth company versus a sales-led growth company? When do you use those different models? What is the best way to actually go to market? We wanted to make sure students understood things like that. How do you define your total addressable market? And not even just, oh, this is who our market is, but how do you calculate that? And then even more, how do you define your ideal customer profile? Who should we be targeting? Understanding buyer personas. I know that's covered in a lot of courses, but okay, how do you actually create that using the data that you have provided? So all of these things, we spent a significant amount of time making sure that students had that foundational knowledge. And then our second unit, we discussed lead management, right? As Jeff brought up in the overview of marketing operations, we think about a B2B lead funnel. We talked about different methodologies, right? Are we going to follow a traditional funnel? Are we going to follow maybe a bow tie model, which some organizations use? What are the pros and cons of those different types of methodologies? And then inside of lead management, how do you actually segment your database? How do you qualify leads? How do you score them so you can identify where people are actually engaging with your marketing materials? How do you nurture those leads so they go from point A to point B and take the next step in their buyer journey as we can infer it? And then also about building life cycles. Marketing, this is a really, really important of marketing operations, which is to define that customer journey and what are those key stage points that somebody has with you, and how do you assign that value to everyone in your database and keep them flowing through the life cycle. So if we move forward to our next slide, you'll see some examples, right? Like these are some diagrams. We weren't just teaching these concepts, but we also taught the students How do you diagram this? And what are the different symbols when you create a process? And this was a really important skill to have because people, if a student coming out of school knows how to not just understand a process diagram, but create their own, of a huge advantage compared to others because senior operations professionals know how to do this very well. So they're already walking out of school with a knowledge of how to not just understand what's going on here, but how to build it themselves. So that took us to the midterm. Like this was the first half of the course were these first 2 units. And then we get into the second half of the course where we focused very much on, okay, you've learned a lot of concepts, you can diagram processes, you understand how marketing operations works. Now let's actually give you the skills to execute. Again, the focus being we want to be job ready, which means we're not going to be spending time learning how to do XYZ concept. And so we focused a lot on email marketing, right? We taught a lot about email marketing best practices, how to write email copy, what should you do for your subject lines, how should you structure your calls to action, legal requirements. It's a really important thing right now. And if students can come out of school knowing how do you market given constraints around things like GDPR, CCPA, they'll be very successful. We talked about how to effectively track and market through social media, paid advertising, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, all of those things we covered of how do you be successful and enable the marketing team to do those things, but also doing them yourselves. I mentioned a little bit earlier, we talked about lead nurturing. We covered the actual implementation of lead nurturing in this unit. So going out and building the emails, building the workflows, and we'll talk more about that part a little bit later, was covered in this unit. And then finally, the 4th unit in the course we covered was analytics, attribution, and AI. None of this matters if they can't understand how to tell a story with data, how to look at the information that they have and that they're getting from marketing campaigns and make decisions. And our focus here was not just, hey, here are these different marketing KPIs. This is an open rate. This is a click rate. This is a MQL to SQL conversion. We taught them how to ask the right questions, how to understand a business process and ask the questions relevant to what does this business need to be successful? And then looking at data in that lens. And then finally, we covered, we had an entire session dedicated to how do you use AI in the right way? And as a practitioner, as somebody who is working in marketing operations, AI is integrated into my workflow in every aspect of my job, whether it's brainstorming, automating processes, summarizing large data sets. And we really felt strongly that students need to leave college knowing how to leverage AI in the right way. So that was a huge focus of what we did in the final unit of the course. So that's all the large breadth of what was the actual meat of what we taught. Now I'd like to talk about, okay, a college education is fantastic. Like obviously my university experience was invaluable in everything that I did. And we then wanted to say, okay, how do we supplement what they're learning in lectures with like learning and certifications that are recognized across the industry? That way, whenever they graduate, they're not just saying, hey, do you have a degree? There are a lot of places that will ask on resumes and job applications, do you have XYZ certification? And we think about from like a marketing technology standpoint, are you HubSpot certified? Are you Marketo certified? Some jobs, that's a requirement, not just a nice to have. So that became a focus, was how can we give them the opportunity to receive certifications that will make them stand out when they're applying for their first marketing role right out of college. And so what we decided to do was leverage the HubSpot Academy. And the HubSpot Academy is a free resource that's provided by HubSpot that provides training and certifications on specific topics. So in addition to learning different methodologies, there's a specific certification for HubSpot's software itself, which the students were encouraged to do. That was part of our material. And they were graded and scored based on their performance in these certifications and assessments. And that was a huge value add to the course because we were just saying, not only do you have learning of these concepts, but you're getting a certification that other people look to when you're going to be applying and trying to receive a role. So the next thing was, okay, we have the content laid out to get them job ready. We have really good certifications so they can be hireable. Now, how do we turn what's lecture material into hands-on learning, right? We didn't want to just say, here are all of these concepts, go figure it out. We wanted to give them the opportunity to learn how to do real marketing. That was a huge focus of the course. And so what we did here, so we were very fortunate to partner with a company. We had Jeff and I have a mutual connection, a mutual colleague who runs a RevOps consulting company. It's called Kintsugi Marketing. And he was incredibly helpful here because he gave us and our students access to a sandbox within his HubSpot environment to allow students to go in and learn how to use HubSpot. Because the one thing about the HubSpot Academy, unless you have access to HubSpot, it's very hard to pass those certifications because you need to know how to use HubSpot to pass those exams. So what was really helpful here was he gave us access to this sandbox. And the way we structured this was we tried to go for a kind of like a 60-40 split in this between learning concepts and then learning how to implement them. It wasn't always exactly like this, but that was kind of what we tried. What was our kind of our baseline was, can we get to this point? And it was a 2-day-a-week course. We taught on Mondays and Wednesdays. And so generally on Mondays, we were teaching things like lectures. We brought in guest speakers who worked in marketing operations, or even VPs of marketing who leverage really good marketing operations teams to provide industry exposure and learning of the concept, excuse me. And then on Wednesdays, we would have dedicated days for actually getting into HubSpot and then walking them through how do you do X, Y, Z. So we also put in things like our project work, where they would meet with their final project teams to work on those, and then exams, things like that. So like you can kind of see how we were structuring this course when it was 2 days a week to go for that 60-40, maybe closer to 50-50 split. And here's just an example of these are all our students learned how to build emails, build forms, add hidden fields to forms to capture tracking data, build reports inside of HubSpot, set up automation. So when somebody fills out a form, they get automated emails afterwards. We taught them how to create fields, how to set up data management rules to make sure that field data stays clean. We taught them how to build lists. We taught them how to segment their database and how to set up automation to either maybe add somebody to a list if they do a certain action, or to take an existing database, segment it out based on different, maybe their buyer personas, and then send emails based off of that, and so much more. I could spend, again, an entire webinar dedicated to all the things that we taught our students. But they became very, very skilled in learning how to use HubSpot, which is a huge point of emphasis. And then lastly, when we think about the content of the course, at the end of the day, we say, okay, how do we take everything they've learned, the certifications, the learning, the hands-on, and reinforce that with real-world experience, right? We were creating essentially simulated examples saying, oh, here's an email that you can build based on some of my prior experience. We said, okay, how can we turn this into what real companies need? And one of the cool things about BYU is they have an entrepreneurship center. It's essentially kind of like a startup incubator where young companies will come and get advice on how they can grow their business. And we were able to leverage that as a resource. And we've had 3 organizations that we were able to use as part of our final projects. And what we ended up doing was we designed a project that we wanted to incorporate everything that they learned across all the units of the course. And so the focus of the final project was we asked them to design and build a nurture campaign. And for those deliverables, they had to show what was their nurture strategy, define their ideal customer profile, how are they going to segment out, what were the different entry points for that nurture. Then they had to diagram it out, right? We taught them how to build to do process diagrams. Okay, diagram that entire nurture strategy. Then they had to go in and actually build everything inside of HubSpot. They built the workflows, they built the emails, they wrote all the copy, they did everything to see how can this turn into life, and then they presented this to us on the last day of class as part of their final project presentation. And here's just an example. I just want to show you how good, it might be a little bit hard to see, but this is just a small snapshot of one of the workflows that one of the groups built. That I thought was the most impressive out of all the presentations we had, where you can see branching logic. You can see different emails based off of actions that they have taken. You can see time delay and wait steps. Like they were very, very, very methodical and took approached this in a really good way. And again, this is one snapshot of what these students were able to do and what they ended this course being able to do. And we're very proud of those results. And that's what I want to talk about now. Let's talk about the results, right? What was the end result of this course? And so at the end of every semester at BYU, and I'm sure most universities follow the same process, we have an end of semester survey where we survey the students, say, hey, like, how would you rate this course to make sure it fulfills the aims of a BYU education? And out of 5, this course ended up with a student rating of 4.8, which was a little bit higher than the department average, which was a huge win for us. This is our first time teaching this course, brand new material, first time for a lot of these students as well, learning these concepts. And we had a really, really high rating for the overall rating of the course. And I want to highlight 2 of the specific elements that they were able to rate us on a score of, 1 to 5. 85% of almost 86% of the students gave this, said this course was very effective at providing opportunities for student involvement. And that was, again, one of our goals. How do we just not give them concepts, but give them opportunities to apply what they learned? And overwhelmingly, that was the response from the students. And so we felt very confident the course was doing that. And then the next one I want to highlight is, was it intellectually enlarging, right? Like, and I know this for a fact as, a former university student. Students don't just want to coast through their classes. They want to be intellectually challenged and stimulated. They want to learn. And they 100% ranked it as very effective, which is a huge win for us, right? Like there was a really good material. They learned a lot. And then just as some anecdotal evidence, I want to highlight some LinkedIn comments from some of these students who said things, there's so much time and effort went into this. They were really excited and grateful for us. One of the students said, it seemed interesting. Maybe I want to take this. And after day 1, I was hooked. We have a student not featured here who is interning in a marketing operations role already, right? Like that is an amazing thing. You'll see one, I hid the name, but this was a colleague of mine who, when he commented on a post that we made where he said, teaching how to actually do marketing in college would have been so great for me, right? So just further anecdotal evidence that this is the type of education that students want because it prepares them for their jobs on day 1. And that was how we designed this course.
Okay, thanks, Andrew. As well as the course went, which we were very excited that the students got great skills, got some great learning. We have some things that we think we can improve upon. So here's just a few thoughts that I had about for this next time we're going to teach this again this coming winter, just like digital marketing. Each of us will be taking a section, my first thought is, that those HubSpot certifications are really great. They work independently of the course. There's some great supplemental material, but how much better if we could actually integrate that with some of the courses. Some of the great learnings, I was like, oh, that's such a fantastic takeaway. I hope they got it. Well, let's actually incorporate that into the course to make sure they're getting that and that's cementing that learning in. The final project it was a great opportunity to put into practice and to do some stuff that was actually beneficial for real startups that are trying to gain traction and startups always need help with their marketing, right? So the marketing seems to be the weakness of almost any startup. And what was interesting about these projects was that we went through the Entrepreneurship Center, and the best fit would have been a new B2B software company, right? That would have been just a great fit for the lessons we wanted to teach them and wanted them to get practice with. But we ended up with 2 of the 3 companies were actually B2C companies. But what was great about marketing operations is, hey, you can actually apply the principles of nurture campaigns and of automations to target, based on their previous actions, what they seem to be interested in. And your segmentation, let's give them more targeted emails based on their segmentation and their actions. They were able to apply that to some B2C companies. But because of the time it took into getting those set up, it wasn't until the last 3 or 4 weeks that the students were actually working with this company to set up those nurture campaigns. So we'd like to obviously get those set up a little bit earlier and then apply some of those principles immediately when we're doing a process flow. All right, after they do the process maps, how are you going to apply this to your client? What does their process map look like? How can they update some of their marketing processes? And finally, just a thought I've had, and this is kind of a natural trade-off, I think, of just education in general, is we taught them all the skills about how do you do marketing automation in HubSpot. So with your lists, with updating the lists, with setting up the automations and setting up these triggers to send people to different pathways and different flows depending on their actions. We taught them how to do that. And then with their final project, a lot of them needed a decent amount of help figuring it out because they knew how to do it, but it was kind of a little bit of kind of a blank slate going, okay, I know I need to do this, but what's the right way to do this? Well, then when it comes down to it, there are a lot of marketing operations professionals have different preferences for how to set up their flows and all of these triggers and all these automations. Some like to do a gigantic map that maps everybody, and then you show all of the triggers and all of the flows that are happening. Some like to manage it with smaller little chunks that go to different maps, and so there's just a lot of different preferences for how to manage that. And so my thought is, I think we might need to give the students just a template. Here's how to set it up. Even though there's not a single right way to do it. If we give them a template and a checklist of here's how to think through your process and adapt it to your organization, that might accelerate their learning. It gives them a little bit of a crutch, but that which might be valuable. That trade-offs in terms of the openness to doing any kind of template or any kind of process map. We lose some of that, but at the same time, they accelerate the ability to do a bulletproof process and set up all those triggers and automations in HubSpot. So that's something I'm thinking about. Another thing I'm thinking about when I have this flipped instruction with a question mark. We all know the flipped classroom, where instead of lecturing in class, you give them the lecture prior to class and you come into class to do the actual activities and give feedback with the professor with the activities in class. What I'm saying about flipped instruction is I'm toying with the idea of, instead of the model where we said, here's how an email nurture campaign works, here's how you want to think about it, here's how the flows, how you want to set up those flows. Now let's go into HubSpot and set up the flow. What if we flip that around? Instead, here's a flow, here's how we implement this in HubSpot, here's all the triggers we're going to do, here's how you do the trigger, here's how you set up your email list so that it goes to the right list here. Now, after you've done that, let's take a step back, and here's how, in theory, how you should set this up. Here's how you think about it now that you already know how to do that. Just potentially some scaffolding where they already know how the software works. Now let's scaffold the understanding of how to set it up on top of that understanding of the software. So something I'm thinking about. And while I'm thinking about HubSpot, so the two main platforms, marketing automation platforms and marketing that I've talked to everybody is either it's going to be HubSpot or Marketo is typically what we're using. We used HubSpot because we had access to it. We were able to give students access to it. And most marketing operations professionals tell us, you need to know how to do it in a software, and then you can learn Marketo. You need to actually get the experience, set this up for a real company, figure that out. And then if you move to a new organization that uses Marketo, it's a learning curve, but it's pretty short. Once you already know how to do it, you just have to figure out the software. Another thing I'm toying with is there is an organization that has offered to, provide a sandbox in Marketo. Do we teach them both HubSpot and Marketo? There's certainly trade-offs there. But having Marketo skills is going to be valuable, but is it more valuable than actually getting more in-depth practice on one software so you know the whole process in HubSpot, which you can adapt to Marketo? Something we're thinking about. Not sure what we'll do next semester. So that's the content we have that we wanted to share with you. We'd love to open it up for questions now.
Awesome. Excuse me. Awesome. Thank you so much. We will go ahead and dive right into the questions. So the first question that I see is, was this course focused on B2B marketing operations, or did you cover any B2C as well?
So I kind of answered that with the final projects. Yeah, we're B2B focused, right? Marketing operations tends to be, B2B, the B2B sales cycle and B2B marketing enablement. But in the end, the principles are not only applicable to B2B, right? So some of these companies, especially with email nurture and some of those automated workflows and segmentation, email flows are really valuable for B2C space as well. So I think those skills and that marketing thought process is very portable to the B2C, but marketing operations tends to be a department within B2B organizations. Andrew, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I'd add as well that one of the nice things that we had is I briefly mentioned this, but one of the elements of the course, we brought in a bunch of guest speakers. We wanted to expose the students not just to I would say narrower or more limited view of how marketing operations is, right? It's a very broad discipline, like I brought up. So we brought in a lot of guest speakers, and I believe I think there were four guest speakers, and two of them were in B2C industries. So they were able to get that exposure as well. So we wanted to make it, and a lot of that too is, the title of the course, the official title was Marketing Automation. And not only was that because maybe marketing operations would have been a little bit more obscure, or what is that? Um, a part of that was to show that these concepts, while yes, we taught a lot of it through the lens of B2B marketing, can be applied to a lot of organizations. And that's why for the final project we focused on nurturing, right? Every organization has email nurturing campaigns. So them knowing how to do that is a very valuable skill, regardless of whether they go B2B or whether they go B2C in their career.
Awesome. And the next question is, how did you get this course going in terms of approvals? So approval for the course.
Oh, very good question. So I was on the curriculum committee for the last 5 years, and yeah, at some organizations that can be really slow and cumbersome. We are fortunate here at BYU. We have this designation of a course, like that's basically anything new you want to try, just make it a 490R. And right, so that's what we did. So we made it a 490R course, which is basically any kind of new elective you want to test out, you just put it on the books, right? So we didn't have to get approvals for it in that sense. But then as we were teaching it, I was actually on the committee, and I put the proposal in through the committee. So now it actually is a set course designated. So this next time we teach it, they'll actually take a marketing set course, not the sort of leftover designation.
All right. The next question is, would this be applicable for just undergrad, or could you use it at an MBA level?
I'll let Andrew take that question.
I'm going to say absolutely. I think if we were going to go to an MBA level, there's a lot, and this was another learning we didn't really discuss. Like I mentioned, marketing operations being a very broad discipline, there are a lot of other concepts around things like change management that we didn't really cover in the course. We didn't really talk about project management a lot in the course, and that's a huge skill that somebody who wants to be a leader in a marketing organization needs to know. There are a lot of things that we discussed, and this is on our discussions for what are we going to change for the next semester. A lot of the more systems administration between, like that we didn't really cover. So we briefly covered things like integrating, HubSpot to Salesforce. We didn't really go into, okay, how do you actually do that? It's a much more technical skill set. It's a much more advanced skill set that I would say would be really good fit for somebody going in through an MBA to learn those concepts, to at least be aware of it. That's something that I'm very fortunate at the organization that I work at, that our VP of marketing has an operational mindset. Even though he doesn't have marketing operations experience, he and I can speak a similar language. I think it's really important, and it's why we're seeing a little bit more and more people in marketing operations move into marketing leadership roles, because they can speak the language of the business. And that's why when I was talking about the four pillars of marketing operations, that strategy operations is a newer pillar, because that is a gap in a lot of people's a skill set in marketing operations. Is, okay, I can do all these technical skills, but how do I actually do things like budgeting and finance and know how to run a marketing business? Think of it as like a business within the business. And so I would absolutely agree that it could be. There's just probably more advanced concepts around things like FP&A. Like I actually know somebody, a colleague of mine in marketing, where FP&A has now been rolled into marketing operations as a subset of that in some degree, because organizations want to know that they're spending their marketing dollars in the right way. So I would absolutely agree this could be rolled into an MBA level education with just more focus on those on those elements.
I would also add that most of my former students who were working in marketing operations, and I've asked them, I was like, hey, you've been out for 3, 5, 6 years. Are you considering an MBA? And almost all they invariably say, well, no, I'm already earning the salary. Like there's no salary bump I'd expect from getting an MBA. But like I think an MBA who is doing it for that purpose, getting that salary bump, having those marketing operations skills, like that can only increase their worth to organization. I think there's a negative stereotype that kind of pervades MBAs in terms of they're managers, and they want to manage rather than get in the weeds, right? And I think almost anybody who's in the industry will tell you that you don't need just a manager who sits up in his office and makes these strategic decisions. They need to understand what's happening boots on the ground, and so having those boots on the ground technical knowledge from marketing operations can only add value.
Yeah. And one more final add I would say, and again, my work experience has been with early stage tech startups for the most part. And in my experience, people in those like leadership roles, the best marketing leaders have some element of they still practically execute and they know how to get their hands dirty still. So I get like, and marketing operations is a great area for that because again, you understand not just, oh, I know the 4 Ps and I know how to write messaging, but you understand how to actually make it work. Like that's a really big, even if you're not doing it yourself, you can have the conversation with the marketing operations person to essentially speak their same language.
All right. Next question that I see is, do any of these platforms require you to have pre-existing contact data before you can have students create drip campaigns or other functions?
In a sense, yes. So what we did, sorry, I'll take this question, Jeff. Like one of the benefits of having that sandbox was we were able to upload it with really just dummy data. Like honestly, what I literally did was I went into ChatGPT and I said, generate me like a list of 1,000 fake organizations with all of these data points that I wanted, and we used it based off of that. And because it was a sandbox, like we weren't actually sending out the emails, and so there wasn't a risk of, are they accidentally going to send this this undergraduate, this email they're working on to, thousands of people. We didn't have that risk because we were able to seed that sandbox with dummy information. And that was that was one of the benefits why we went with HubSpot was our ability to get access to something like that very quickly. But yeah. So you would have to do the legwork of providing that information, and we went the route of let's use 100% fake information, so we're not dealing with, you know, privacy issues of using somebody's email address where they don't know where it is, right? So that was our approach.
Yeah, I'm still puzzling over how to give them dummy data that'll actually get processed data. So we actually like they send out the fake email that they've done, and then you see is your routing correct, right? I still haven't figured out how to do that right, where then you can see with temporal lags. Like, okay, now we get this data where we simulate, this percentage of people open the email, this percentage of clicked on this particular field, and then you want to route them somewhere different. Yeah,
Yeah.
I would love to give them that experience of seeing it actually work, but I don't know how you simulate data in that way.
All right. The next question is, who chose the companies that students used for their projects?
Yeah, good question. So we worked with the Center for Entrepreneurship, and I told them some of the specs of what the ideal company would be, and then they came back with 3 companies, and it was basically, I think, based on who's in the right stage of the company, who has real customers, needs some help with marketing, and wants to be involved. Right. And so, as I mentioned, 2 of the 3 were actually B2C companies, which was not the ideal that we were looking for. But it worked out anyway, and I think this go around, we'll probably try to be a little more specific about what we're looking for and what the characteristics of the company that would, that'd be the ideal company to work for with this final project. But that was, the Center for Entrepreneurship. I think when you're working with the real clients, the real constraint is who's really willing to work with you and will give you their time for that. There's lots of companies who will say, "Oh yeah, that sounds really great," and then they're busy with their own company. They're not going to give the students the time and the attention that the students need to actually complete the project. So that's really that was the big determinant.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that we've discussed for the future, right? We mentioned that one of our goals for the next semester is to start work on the final project sooner. And one of those areas that we're exploring is I'm a member of a professional development community for marketing operations people. It's called the Mo Pros community, and it's a fantastic organization specifically for them. And been talking to the founder of that and saying, hey, like, here's an opportunity for some organization, maybe companies within this organization who are looking for, who want to give these students this opportunity. The response has been pretty positive. A lot of when I mentioned that I shared the results of this class and the, what we were doing with people in my network, so many people were so excited by it, and they said, when you do this again, I'd love to be involved in some way. So the marketing operations community is a very tight knit group of professionals. They're always willing to help each other. And so that's going to be a focus as well, as can we get some of those, can we start the project of can we start the work of finding these companies sooner? And so they can fit all those requirements that we have, even better than the ones we did.
Next question is, how much of this course was big picture operations versus tactical campaign planning?
That's a good question. So really when we think back to those units, the first unit was very much big picture, right? We were talking about, okay, based on your business model, which go-to-market motion is ideal for you. How do you identify that? Like, we did one of our assignments for the class was I presented them with two different organizations and said, hey, go to this company's website and identify all of these different things based on what you can find, because a good organization, you'll be able to figure all that and make the right understand. Are they following a product-led growth model? They're following a sales-led growth model. Who is their ideal customer profile? Can you estimate their total addressable market based on what you can identify from them? So a lot of that was, more picture strategy planning. But then once we started getting into lead management and campaign execution and analytics, we really wanted to get into the execution of how do you do this while still covering those concepts, right? So when we were doing email marketing, for example, I think we had, I'm trying to remember the exact, I think we have 3 or 4 sessions exclusively on email marketing. And on one of those, we talked about the email marketing landscape, right? The history of email marketing. We talked about the different regulations around opt-in and consent. We talked about how do you manage hard bounces and soft bounces so you don't tank your email deliverability. Things that people in marketing operations think about every single day. We covered a lot of those. And then we got into, okay, now you understand what email marketing is and the core things that you need to know. How do you actually execute on it? And that was also the focus. We didn't talk about our exam structure. So that was another, like, we used our midterm and our final exam to skill on those higher level concepts. And we did it as, it was kind of almost like 70, or I don't remember the exact split of the questions, but a lot of the questions were, simple multiple choice of, okay, this definition, this type of thing. But then a lot of those exams where we would give the students a scenario and say, based on this scenario, which is true, which is not true, or what would you do next, based on what they learned in class. And that was a really good way we found to skill on those high level concepts, and that they do need to know, but then also using the final project and assignments to test the application and those individual and the hands-on part.
Yeah, and that gets at kind of what the flipped instruction I'm toying with the idea of doing is, instead of starting high level and then going down to, okay, implementation, teaching the implementation and then expanding out to the high level. Not sure that there's trade-offs involved. Not sure what, but that's something I'm considering.
So, all right, the next question. Did you do anything with AI in this course?
Yeah, as Andrew mentioned, the last session was focused on AI and AI implementation with the various steps. Obviously, that's going to change a bunch this coming semester. And I think the idea is we want them to understand how to implement AI, to make things more efficient. But also we don't want to put the cart in front of the horse in terms of, they need to understand that there's constraints in an organization. And there are a lot of marketing operations professionals who are saying, oh yeah, AI is going to be great. We're having a tough time. Actually, like, it's mostly like every individual on the team is using AI how they see fit to do their job instead of making this an organizational, like this is how we do things in AI and having set procedures within our company. And so, I think the script again is unwritten in terms of how companies are best implementing AI as a company, as an organization, rather than as like, okay, here's your job, here's how you can use AI to help you do your job. Here, what's the organizational optimization of implementing AI? That's I think lots of marketing operations professionals are struggling with how do you manage that process. And so we'll be incorporating best practices from what we learn. And it's been a year, which is an eternity in AI terms. So I'm sure it'll change a bunch this coming time.
Yeah, I mean, thinking back to, I mean, since we taught that lesson, um, new models have come out. I know a big thing that's happening now in the realm of AI is agentic AI. That wasn't widely discussed when we were presenting this because it was very like that hadn't been released from ChatGPT 5. And so our focus was on, and this is more of my own personal philosophy, right? This is, these are my thoughts now that I'm about to share, which is, I look at how can I use AI as a tool to enhance what I'm doing, enhance my skill set. It's an interesting, like a lot of people in my network were discussing and debating, where with AI doing a lot of heavy lifting in terms of like content writing, how do you learn those marketing skills that you kind of only can learn in the trenches by writing ads yourself, by writing emails yourself? A lot of like when you think of marketing as like a discipline and like an apprenticeship, like how are you learning those skills? Um, and so our focus when we taught the AI lecture was how do you use AI in different roles? And for example, like a big one is how do you use AI to help you brainstorm? How do you help? How do you use AI to help you write content and revise content? And that was actually what we instructed them to do when they were working on their final exam and writing emails was, hey, write these emails yourself and then use ChatGPT to help you revise it and refine it and make it better. And that is what I found in my own personal career is the best way to leverage an LLM model, which is I'm going to use the skills that I know, the best practices that I already know, and then prompt the model to say, okay, make this better based on these requirements that I have. And that was the approach that we took. And it seemed to, and like Jeff said, a year is a long time with AI. Like the models are very different. There's a lot of new things that can happen. So we're going to take that into account for next semester.
All right. Keep on going with the next question. Is there any way of getting students to get their hands dirty if the institution doesn't have access to platforms like HubSpot?
Yeah, so our institution doesn't have access to HubSpot, and I actually reached out to a former student who works at HubSpot, um, and he was like, "Hey, we've got this academic licenses on HubSpot," and he showed me the website. But I'd already been to the website and I'd investigated that, and the links are broken. And I think HubSpot had grand plans of sort of the Qualtrics model of, "Hey, let's train a bunch of students to use our platform, and then when they go into the workforce." They'll bring our software into their company, and it's just the pathway to HubSpot just didn't work out for them. So I think they kind of gave that up. And so they don't have academic licenses anymore. And so we were, very fortunate to connect with Ian Shields at Kintsugi Marketing, who gave us access. I have just had a talk with somebody from another organization who is considering signing up for like a mentor license. There's some kind of special license with Marketo where you can provide a sandbox environment for people. But, again, that costs money as well. And so the short answer is, yeah, you got to figure out a connection. HubSpot, I know Ian Shields has a particular relationship with HubSpot that he's not unique in that relationship. I think they have sort of their evangelist network. And so if you can find one of those, I think there's a good chance they would be eager to, share that access and give that sandbox access to a university class.
Exactly, Jeff. I would, yeah, try to find a HubSpot partner. And you might have more success finding a partner who is more like like a solo consultant versus a larger agency, then things might get a little more complicated because, like I said, people in marketing operations are so eager to help the next generation of marketing operations professionals. They want to do it. Like when I brought up that we'd done this course, so many people in my network were just, can I be involved next time? Like I'd love to help in some way. Like, can I present? Can I help? So try to try to find people in your network who can do that. Like feel free to reach out to me. Like I'm happy to try to connect you with people that I know as well, maybe in your geographic location. I know people all over the country in the United States who want to help and could fill the same role that Ian Shield at Kintsugi Marketing filled for us. So that'd probably be the path we could maybe start with.
Awesome. Then really quickly, we could probably fit in one more question. Besides using a CRM application to prepare students for a job, what other areas could you use to get them job ready?
That's a really good question. I think, again, maybe this is based on, there's a couple of things I would say. The first would be, since there's so many people coming in their entry level jobs in marketing operations or marketing automation, growth marketing, demand generation, whatever, there are a lot of different kind of sub disciplines within marketing now. Email marketing, right, is a big place, right? There are a ton of email marketing automation platforms, MailChimp, ActiveCampaign, the list goes on. And I would also, what I would also say as well, like email marketing would be a big focus of mine when you're designing your course. The second thing I would say is this. There are tens of thousands of marketing automation platforms. There's a group that I follow that I think it's Martech Weekly that creates, Scott Brinker, he's the VP of platform ecosystem at HubSpot. He creates like a marketing technology landscape every single year, and it grows by tens of thousands every single year. It's exponential growth. So I would say the focus should be on not how do you learn a specific technology, because technologies change, they get acquired, they go out of business. Like the marketing technology landscape is massive, but the skills can be easily transferred from one to the other, maybe with some learning, right? Like HubSpot and Marketo, very different in terms of how you execute. But if you understand the concepts of how do you diagram a process, how do things move from point A to point B, you can pick up any marketing technology, right? Like from my own experience, I was hired as a Marketo consultant, and I didn't have prior Marketo knowledge. They were just very impressed with how I understood how to diagram a process and how to actually design workflows and logic to make marketing work. And then I was able to learn Marketo and become certified within 3 months. So that was a very aggressive timeline. Like usually get Marketo certified, it takes about 9 months to a year because it's technical. But the point I'm trying to illustrate is these technologies, new technologies are developed over like by tens of thousands every year. So focus really on the concepts. And that's why we taught them how to diagram processes very early on in the semester, so they can take that skill with whatever marketing automation platform they're using.
Okay, well, that looks like all the time that we have. So thank you again, Jeff and Andrew, for being here and speaking with us, and Stukent for sponsoring this webinar. As a reminder, the session will be available on demand, and you'll be receiving a link to the on-demand content within 24 hours. Or if you hang out on this page and refresh in like 2 hours, that join session button you clicked becomes a view on demand button. Before you go, I'd also like to draw your attention to the session survey now available. We'd really love to hear any and all feedback that you may have for us. Thank you once again for joining us. I hope you all have a great rest of your day and a great weekend.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.